Mr. President, Barack, it's a great pleasure for me to host you here in Jerusalem. When I suggested to President Obama in his visit to Jerusalem, I said, if you take action against Iran's nuclear facilities, it would greatly enhance the prestige of America and will effectively allow you to address other theaters, other conflicts with a posture of enormous strength. So he said, Bibi, nobody likes Goliath, and I don't want to strut the world stage as an 800-pound gorilla. And I thought, and I said this to my colleague Yitzhak Molcho after we left the room, I said, in this kind of world, I'd like to be a 1,200-pound gorilla.
Global View columnist Walter Russell Mead recently interviewed Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv. And after acknowledging the challenges posed by both China and Russia, the Israeli Prime Minister addressed what he sees as the bigger threat, quote, interstitched between East and West.
Iran represents the rise of a radical Islamic state that could be the first nuclear power that is run by radical Islam. It could happen also in Pakistan if there is a regime change in the Islamist takeover. That would already be a ready-made nuclear Islamist power. But Iran is already run by an Islamist theocracy, a thugocracy really, that if it gets its hands on nuclear weapons, would make this already complicated multipolar world much more complicated. Because look at what Iran is doing today without nuclear weapons, and then you can project forth what it will do with nuclear weapons.
In December, Mr. Netanyahu began his third term, and discussing possible solutions to the Iran problem, agreed with Walter's assessment that while you often make alliances with those who share your values, sometimes alliances are needed with those who don't.
America is the indispensable alliance. It's the indispensable alliance. But it doesn't mean you can't have other alliances. If we beat them to the punch, I think we can expand the circle of peace. And if we expand the circle of peace to Saudi Arabia, then I think we effectively end the Arab-Israeli conflict, which means we work our way, not inside out, solve the Palestinian problem. You can't, because they don't want a solution with Israel, they want a solution without Israel. And if we wait for them, we'll wait another quarter of a century. We didn't. So we went around. We have to continue the circle, and then we can work our way back in. Why? When they see the entire Arab world coming to a closure with Israel, believing that the Jewish state is here to stay, then you might be able to get a workable peace with them, one that we could live with and not die with. I think that's possible.
Next up, Walter got Mr. Netanyahu on the subject of his relationship with Washington. Since Mr. Biden became president, his Iran strategy has been focused on reviving the Iran nuclear deal, sealed in 2015 under President Obama.
There's been a change in the perception in Washington. And here's the change. First of all, on Iran, probably 6 months ago, 7 months ago, they were ready to cut a deal. And then reality, clubbed them on the head, both with these incredible protests inside Iran and, of course, the supply of the killer drones to Russia. So that pushed that aside. And so America's position, while not in any way identical to Israel's and to my position, is closer, it's less far apart than it was before, and I don't think they're heading into that agreement. I have to say that I think Joe Biden is a real friend. I'm not just saying that because we're here and I have to say it. Now, I really know him. He has that sentiment. But he would also like to solve the Palestinian problem, but he just doesn't think that he can. And I think they understand that there's no prizes in the offing now, so they're not tempted by this. I think they have a more sober view. So, yeah, we have differences, but they're not, let's say this, they don't have the passion and zeal of former years. You get my point? Not quite. Not quite.
In November last year, Mr. Biden was asked if the Iran nuclear deal or Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was dead.
President Biden, could you please announce that JCPOA is dead? Can you just announce that? No, why not?
The thing is, if the administration were to say, okay, the JCPOA is completely dead, there's no going back to it in the foreseeable future, they need to have an Iran policy. And what would that Iran policy be?
You have to, okay. What would that Iran policy be? Well, okay, ask a question. How do you stop a rogue nation from acquiring nuclear weapons? So the only thing that has credibly stopped rogue nations from developing nuclear weapons is a credible military threat or a credible military action. You can couple that with crippling economic sanctions, but that's not a sufficient condition. A necessary condition, and often a sufficient condition, is credible military action. The longer you wait, the harder that becomes. We've waited very long. In any case, I can tell you that I will do everything in my power to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. That is not merely an Israeli interest, it's an American interest, it's in the interest of the entire world.
Walter Russell Mead's full interview with Mr. Netanyahu, which really is compelling viewing for anyone with an interest in world politics, is available on YouTube and all WSJ platforms, so please do check it out.